Hello guys, welcome to the Python series on learning. My name is Nse. Today we are going to talk about conditionals. Let's get right to it. Conditionals are used to make decisions in programming. They allow you to execute different blocks of code based on certain conditions. In programming, when working with conditionals, we use conditional statements to specify the actions or tasks that should be executed based on the outcome of the condition. In Python, the main conditional statements are if statement, elif statement, and else statement. Let's talk about these statements, taking them one after the other. Starting with the if statement. If statement is used to check if a condition is true or false. Remember we talked about Boolean data type in the previous lesson, where we said Booleans evaluate to either true or false. Conditionals are based on Boolean values. In the case of if statement, if the condition is true, the code block following the if statement is executed. This is how the structure of if statement is. You first of all have the if condition, and then you will have the code to be executed if the condition is true. And the code will be executed only if the condition is true. Notice how this line right under the if condition has this space at the beginning. This is called indentation. This space here is called indentation. In Python, indentation refers to the spaces or tabs placed at the beginning of a line of code. So in this case, this is the beginning of this line of code. I'm referring to line 21, and we have this space at the beginning. So this space here is called indentation. When using conditionals in Python, indentation is very important because it determines which code block is associated with a given condition. Like in this case, we have this if condition, and we have the next line of code under it. Just because this line of code has this space, just because this line of code is indented, Python understands that this is the line of code that is associated with this if condition. So if this condition is true, then this line of code would be executed. If we have another line of code here that is not indented, then this line of code is not associated with the if statement. This line of code would execute anyways, whether this if condition is met or not. This line of code will run. Let's take a minute and see how indentation works using if statement as an example. So we have this example block of code here, and it has an if statement. Considering the structure given here, when writing an if statement, you have to have this if keyword and then set a condition. So in this case, the condition is x is greater than 0. So we are saying that if x is greater than 0, then we have these two indented lines of code. To indent a line of code, you can use the tab key of your keyboard, or you can use the space bar of your keyboard. I prefer to use the tab key. So I am going to quickly demonstrate how that works. I'll hit on the backspace key to take this line of code back, and down I have it written like this. So if I want to indent it, I'm going to just hit on the tab key of my keyboard and it creates this space. I could decide to tap on the space key of my keyboard a number of times, say 4 times, and I have the space created again. Whether you're using the tab key of your keyboard or you're using the space bar of your keyboard, what matters here is a consistent number of spaces or tabs while creating indentation. So you can see that I already have this syntax error that says unexpected indentation. That's because the space here is smaller than the space that's here. So while indenting, you want to be sure that you are consistent. So I will use the backspace key of my keyboard and push this line a bit. Now notice that the syntax error is gone. So indentation is very, very important in Python. So indentation here is telling Python that if this condition is met, if x is greater than 0, then print x is positive. Also, print x is greater than 0. And this other print statement, because it is not indented, is not bounded by this if statement. This print statement is going to run whether x is greater than 0 or x is not greater than 0. Okay, so I have something to save. I'll quickly save and let's run this code. So notice here on the terminal that we have x is positive, x is greater than 0, and we have this line is not indented and will always execute. X in this case is 5 because we have assigned 5 this x variable. So this line of code is simply saying if 5, because x is 5, is greater than 0, print x is positive, print x is greater than 0. And that's what we saw here. Now let's make x minus 5. Let's save. I'm going to clear the terminal. Let's execute this code again. So notice that in this case, because x, which we have set to minus 5, is not greater than 0, all the indented lines of code have been omitted. They did not execute because the condition here is not met. We are saying that if x is greater than 0, then do these 2 lines of code. Now x is not greater than 0, so these 2 lines of code will not run. However, line 31 will run because it is not indented, showing that it's not bounded by this if condition. So let's indent line 31. Let's save. I will clear the terminal. Let's execute this code again. Notice that this time nothing is printed at all because all these 3 lines of code will only run if the condition on line 28 is met. And currently this condition is not met. This condition is false. It is not true. It's false. So nothing is going to be printed. Let's take x back to 5. So now that x is 5, this condition is true. X is greater than 0. because actually 5 is greater than 0. So in that case, let's run this code and see what happens. If I say run and if I say run, I mean execute, and see what happens. So this time, because this line of code on 28 evaluates to true, remember we said that these conditionals are based on either true or false. So because line 28 evaluates to true, we now have these three lines of code executed. X is positive, X is greater than 0. This line is not indented and will always execute. Yeah, I know how this sounds, but I'm sorry, I just needed to push it into the if condition to emphasize the point. So that's basically how the if statement works. Now let's see another example of if statement. So in this case, we have the variable age and we are assigning the value of 18 to it. And we have our if condition here on line 37 saying if age is greater than or equal to 18, print you are eligible to vote. So in this case, Python is going to look at the condition on line 37 with respect to this age variable. So it is going to consider this age variable, which is 18, and it is going to evaluate this statement to see if it is true or false. So if age is truly greater than or equal to 18, then this line of code, this indented line of code is going to run. And then we will have you are eligible to vote printed on the terminal. So let's run this code and see what happens. Age is exactly 18 here. So we have you are eligible to vote. Now what happens if we make age to be 40? Let's save. Let's run this code. Because 40 is greater than 18, we still have you are eligible to vote. This condition evaluates to true still. Now, what happens if we change age to 4? Let's save. Now, I'm going to clear the terminal. Let's run this code again. Notice that this time, nothing is printed on the screen because this condition is not met. Now, we just wouldn't want nothing to happen just because this condition is not met. So we would introduce another condition. If this condition is not met, we do not know what should happen. So we would want to say what should happen if this condition is not met. In that case, we could use the elif or an else statement. Now let's talk about the elif statement. Let's see how it can be applied. Elif statement checks additional conditions if the previous if or elif conditions are not met. This is what the structure looks like. We just talked about the if condition. And elif here says that if the previous if condition is not met. So what this tells us is that before you can use elif, there has to be a previous if condition. So that's why the structure looks like this. First of all, we have the if condition stated first, and then we now have the elif condition. So what this means is Python, check this if condition. If it is true, execute this line of code. If it is false, then come to elif condition. And when you get to elif condition, check to see if elif condition is true or false. If elif condition is true, then execute this line of code. Now, let's see an example. I have this example here. I'm just going to uncomment it and I'll save. So this is how an elif statement looks. in a very simple form. So we are still using age variable, and this time we are assigning 16 to it, and we are still comparing, and we are saying if age is greater than or equal to 18, print you are eligible to vote. If age is greater than or equal to 16, print you can get a learner's driving license. So in this case, while on line 11, Python is going to check if age, which is 16 in this case, is greater than or equal to 18. Now, if this condition is true, line 12, which is the indented line directly under the if condition, is going to run. If the condition is not true, then Python is going to move to this elif condition and check if the elif condition is true. If the elif condition is true, then line 14, which is the indented line directly under the elif condition, will run. Currently, age is equal to 16. So let's run this code and see what happens. So notice that you can get a learner's driving license printed. That's because, of course, the condition on line 11 evaluates to false. In this case, age is not greater than 18. Age is not equal to 18. Now let's make age equal to 18 and see what happens. I will run this code again. Notice now that we have you are eligible to vote. So because line 11 evaluated to true in this case, there was no need for Python to look any further. It's true, so it did not come down to consider whether there is any other conditional statement provided. And that's basically how it works. Once it evaluates to true, that's it. Python looks no further. All right, let's make this even bigger than 18. Let's say 28. I'll clear the terminal so we'll see what happens. Let's run this code. We still have you are eligible to vote. That's because this condition on line 11 is met. Age in this case is greater than 18. I hope that is clear. Let's look at another example with elif. Remember that in our definition we said that elif checks additional conditions if the previous if or elif conditions are not met. So in this example, we had just one elif condition. Let's see another example, this time with more than one elif condition. As you can see here, we have elif on line 22 and we have elif on line 24. Here we have the x variable and we have assigned 10 to it. So in this case, x is 10. And then we come down to line 20 and we provide an if condition. Remember that there always has to be a previous if condition before you can have any elif conditions. So in this case, our if condition is if x is less than 5. So we are telling Python, considering that x is 10, check to see if x is less than 5. So we are basically saying check to see if 10 is less than 5. If it is true that 10 is less than 5, print x is less than 5. If it is not true, come down to this elif condition and check if x is less than 10. So in this situation now, elif condition will be checking if 10 is less than 10. If it evaluates to true, print x is between 5 and 9. If it is not true, come down to this elif condition again. This time, check to see if x, which is 10, is less than 15. If this condition is true, print x is between 10 and 14. If it is not true, do nothing. So let's run this code. Currently, our x value is 10. So notice here that we have x is between 10 and 14. We have x is between 10 and 14 because this is the only condition that evaluates to true in this case. 10 is not less than 5. So line 21 will not run. 10 is not less than 10. So line 23 will not run. However, 10 is less than 15. Truly, 10 is less than 15. So line 24 evaluates to true. That's why we have line 25, which is the indented line immediately after the elif condition run. And so we have x is between 10 and 14 printed to us. Now let's change x to 1 and let's run this code. Notice that now we have x is less than 5. That's because the if condition is true, and so the next indented line after the if condition runs, and this indented line has x is less than 5. So we have x is less than 5 printed here. Now let's make x 9. Let's save and let's run this code. We have x is between 5 and 9 printed on the terminal. So in this case, the condition on line 20 is not true. The condition on line 20 is false. So Python moved on to line 22, which has the elif condition, and the elif condition is met. So elif condition here, 9 is less than 10. That's true. So the next indented line of code under this elif statement was executed. That x is between 5 and 9. So that is why we have x is between 5 and 9 printed. And that's it for elif. Let's now talk about the else statement. Else statement is used to provide an option when none of the previous conditions is true. Now, else statement, unlike if and elif, does not require a condition to be checked. Here is the structure. So first we have an if condition. Now if this condition is true, then of course it will be executed, and then there will be no need to consider any other conditions below it. But if the if condition is not true and there is an elif condition, because there are cases where you do not have an elif condition, in such a case you have just the if condition and then you have the else condition. So where there is an elif condition, if the elif condition is true, the next indented line of code to it would be executed and there would be no need to look further down. But if the elif condition is not met, then else condition is considered. Let's see an actual example. I have this code. It was all commented out, so I uncommented it. In this case, we have just the if condition and then we have else given. So there is no elif provided here. We only just have if and then else. So we are telling Python, if color is white, print true, else print false. So let's run this code and see what happens. We have true printed. That is because in this case, color is white. Now, if we decide to make color black, And let's save and run this code. In this case, we have false printed to us. So this is it. On line 15, we have the if condition that says if color is white, print true. So we are basically saying if the code on line 15 evaluates to true, print true. Else, print false. So in this case, it does not evaluate to true. Color is not white. It means this condition, the condition on line 15 is not met. That's the if condition. So Python looks further down and it finds the else statement. So the else statement is now considered. So that means that the next indented line of code under else would execute. So we have false here. Now notice that we did not have to explicitly specify a condition for the else statement to consider. That is because the else statement is going to run when none of the statements before it evaluates to true. Like in this case, we have the if condition stated here on line 15. So if this condition had run, then there would have been no need for else to come into play. So else does not require an explicit condition to run, because else will only run when all the other conditions evaluate to false. I hope that you get the point. Let's see another example using else. This time we have an elif condition specified. So we have the age variable set to 12 and we are checking on line 27 to see if age is greater than or equal to 18. So if this evaluates to true, you are eligible to vote will be printed. Elif age is greater than or equal to 16. So if age is not greater than or equal to 18, but age is greater than or equal to 16, that's what this means. Print, you can get a learner's driving license. But if this condition is not met on line 29, then we will come down to else and would print you are too young to vote or get a driver's license. So when none of these conditions is met, then else is going to run. Else will only run if none of these conditions is met. Now, considering that age is set to 12, let's run this code and see. So we have you are too young to vote or get a driver's license. That's because 12 is not greater than 18. 12 is not equal to 18. This if condition evaluates to false because 12 is not greater than 18. 12 is not equal to 18. So we checked the next condition, which is the elif condition. 12 is not greater than 16. 12 is not equal to 16. So this code on line 29 evaluates to false too. So we check the next condition, which is else, and else will just go ahead and run because all the conditions before it evaluates to false. So let's say that age was 22. Let's run this code. So we have you are eligible to vote, and that's from the if condition on line 27. If age is greater than or equal to 18, 22 is greater than 18. So this line of code was executed. That's just it. Now let's make age to be 17 and let's run this code. So now we have you can get a learner's driving license. So in this case, line 27 did not run. So Python moved down to the next condition, which is provided on line 29, and this evaluates to true. So that's why we have you can get a learner's driving license printed here. I hope that you get the point. So this is basically how to use the conditionals if, elif, and else. To wrap up today's lesson, let's build a kind of game where we tell the user to guess a number, and then we are going to compare the user's guess with a number that we have set here to be 3. And if the user is able to guess 3, then we are going to say, congratulations, you guessed the secret number. And we are using interpolation to collect the value of the number variable in this line of code. We have an elif condition here, and we are saying if the guess is less than the number, then we will print too low. And we're using f strings. Notice this f here. So we are able to interpolate the value of guess variable as well as the value of number variable in this line of code. And if the guess is not equal to the number and the guess is not less than the number, then we are going to print too high. Guess is higher than number. So let's see how that works. I have to delete this. I think I wrote it more than once. Now on line 7, we have this line of code. We have the variable guess, and we are assigning output of this line of code to it. And this line of code, first we have the input function. Remember what we said the input function does. If you do not, please, you can refer to the lesson on built-in functions. The link is provided in the description. So in this case, we have this input. The input function is going to prompt the user to enter any number between 1 and 10. And then we are wrapping it with int. Remember, we talked about typecasting. In this case, int here is going to convert whatever input that the user enters to an integer. That's just what this line of code means. So let's run this code and see what happens. Okay, the user has been prompted, guess the secret number. So it's giving us a clue. The number should be between 1 and 10. Remember that the number that we are comparing against is 3. Let's guess 5. So we have here too high. 5 is higher than 3. So it means that the else statement was executed because the condition on line 8 was not met. 5, which is our guess, is not equal to 3, which is our number. The elif condition too was not met because 5, which is our guess, is not less than 3, which is our number. So that's why the else statement was executed. Now let's do it one more time. I'll run the code, and this time let's guess 2. I'll hit enter. I have 2 low. 2 is lower than 3. And I have these figures, whatever I enter, printed out just the way I entered it because I'm interpolating the guess variable using f string. Also, we would repeatedly have 3 printed out here because we are interpolating the number variable in this f string as well. I hope that you get the point. If any of this sounds confusing to you, please do refer to the lesson on f strings. I have provided the link in the description. I'll clear the terminal. Let's run this code one last time. So the user is being prompted again to enter another number. So this time around, I'll enter 3 and then I'll hit the enter key of my keyboard, and congratulations, you guessed the secret number. The secret number is 3. So basically, that's how conditionals can be used in Python. I hope that you get the point. If you have any questions or comments, please say them in the comment section. This is the much that we are going to take in today's lesson. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to learn in. Thank you for watching. See you in the next lesson.